Ruthless fires a poor employee years later. He's working for her. The city skyline shimmered in the morning light, a stark contrast to the cold, sterile atmosphere inside the towering office building of Victoria Enterprises. Victoria Kane, the ruthless and polished too, strode down the marble-floored hallway, her high heels clicking like a metronome. She was a woman who exuded power and authority, with a sharp gaze that could cut through steel. Her tailored navy suit fit her perfectly, a reflection of her precision in everything she did. Inside her sprawling corner office, a young man sat nervously at a desk cluttered with files and sketches. Liam Carter, a struggling artist trying to make ends meet, had taken an internship at Victoria Enterprises, desperate for any opportunity to pay his rent. His dream of making it big in the art world seemed farther away with each passing day. But Liam was determined to keep going, even if it meant working for someone like Victoria. Liam was hunched over his laptop, tweaking the design for an upcoming marketing campaign. He poured his creativity into the project, hoping to impress his boss. The campaign featured a vibrant and innovative visual approach, something he believed would stand out in the market. Victoria walked in without knocking, her eyes immediately scanning the screen. "Liam," she said coldly, "what is this?" Liam jumped slightly, his fingers freezing over the keyboard. "It's the concept for the new campaign, ma'am." "I thought—" "Stop," she interrupted, holding up a hand. Her perfectly manicured nails glinted under the office lights. "This is amateurish. It's cluttered, messy. Do you think this represents the sophistication of Victoria Enterprises?" Liam's heart sank. He had worked all night on the design, convinced it captured the bold vision the company needed. I thought it was bold, something that could grab attention," he stammered. "Bold?" Victoria scoffed. "Bold doesn't mean chaotic. Redo it. And this time, remember who you're working for." She turned on her heel and left the room, leaving Liam deflated. His shoulders slumped as he stared at the screen, the bright colors of his design mocking him. He felt a familiar pang of self-doubt creep in. No matter how hard he tried, it seemed he was always falling short. Hours later, as the workday drew to a close, Liam was called into Victoria's office. She sat behind her enormous desk, her expression unreadable. Her cold blue eyes flicked to him as he entered. "Liam," she began, "I've reviewed your performance over the past 3 months, and it's clear you're not a fit for this company." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. "Wait, what?" "Ma'am, I've been working hard and I thought—" "That's the problem," she said, cutting him off. "You think too much and deliver too little. We need people who produce results, not excuses. I can't waste resources on someone who isn't contributing to the level I expect." Liam felt his cheeks burn with humiliation. "I just need more time. I'm learning and I know I can do better." Victoria leaned forward, her tone icy. "This is business, Liam. Results matter, not potential. You're dismissed. HR will handle the paperwork." For a moment, Liam stood frozen, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Then, with a deep breath, he turned and left the office. The walk out of the building felt like an eternity, his mind racing with a mix of anger, sadness, and frustration. By the time he stepped onto the crowded street, the humiliation had begun to morph into determination. He clenched his jaw, vowing to prove her wrong. He wasn't going to let Victoria Kane's dismissal define him. If anything, it would fuel him. Months passed, and Liam struggled to find his footing. Without a steady job, he took on odd gigs to pay the bills. He painted murals for local businesses, designed custom artwork for clients, and spent sleepless nights honing his craft. The rejection from Victoria Enterprises lingered in the back of his mind, but it also pushed him to work harder. One day, while scrolling through social media, he came across an announcement for a citywide art competition. The prize? A chance to showcase his work in one of the most prestigious galleries in the city, along with a generous cash reward. Liam's heart raced as he read the details. This was his chance, a way to prove not just to the world but to himself that he had what it took. He threw himself into the competition, pouring every ounce of his passion and creativity into his submission. His small apartment became a chaotic studio, paint splattered on the walls and floor as he worked tirelessly. Days turned into weeks, and finally, The piece was complete, a breathtaking mural that captured the resilience of the human spirit. It was bold, vibrant, and unapologetically his. When the results of the competition were announced, Liam could hardly believe his ears. He had won. The gallery exhibit was a whirlwind of emotions, with critics and art lovers praising his work. His story, a struggling artist who refused to give up, resonated with everyone who saw the piece. As the months went on, Liam's career took off. His artwork was featured in magazines, commissioned by high-profile clients, and displayed in galleries across the country. He had finally made it. Meanwhile, Victoria Kane's world was crumbling. A series of poor business decisions and a scandal involving the company's finances had tarnished her reputation. Investors pulled out, and the once mighty Victoria Enterprises collapsed under the weight of its debts. For the first time in her life, Victoria found herself without power, without wealth, and without a plan. She tried to maintain her composure, applying for positions at other companies, but her reputation preceded her. No one wanted to hire the woman who had driven her own empire into the ground. Her savings dwindled, and she was forced to sell her luxury penthouse and downsize to a modest apartment. The stark contrast to her former life was jarring, and for the first time, she began to understand the struggles of those she had dismissed so easily. Desperate for work, she stumbled upon a listing for an assistant position at a prominent art studio. The pay was meager, but at this point, she couldn't afford to be picky. She submitted her application and was surprised to receive an invitation for an interview the next day. When Victoria walked into the studio, she was struck by its beauty. The walls were adorned with stunning pieces of art, each one more captivating than the last. She waited nervously in the reception area, clutching her portfolio as her mind raced. She hadn't felt this unsure of herself in decades. "Victoria Kane?" a voice called. She stood and turned, her breath catching in her throat. Standing before her, wearing a tailored suit and a confident smile, was Liam Carter. Victoria froze, her polished composure slipping for just a moment as she stared at Liam. The young man she had dismissed without a second thought years ago now stood before her, exuding an aura of confidence and success that was impossible to ignore. He looked every bit the part of someone who had made it, sharp, poised, and self-assured. Liam's eyes flicked over her, his expression neutral but calm. "Victoria," he said, extending a hand. "It's been a while." She hesitated, her mind racing to piece together how this could be. The last she'd seen of Liam, he was fumbling with his things, humiliated as he left her office for the last time. Now, here he was, successful, in control. Finally, she took his hand, her grip firm but slightly unsteady. "It has," she replied, her voice as smooth as she could manage. "I wasn't expecting to see you here." Liam tilted his head slightly, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "I imagine not. Shall we?" He gestured toward his office. Victoria followed him, her heels clicking against the polished wooden floor of the studio. The space was stunning, filled with light and creativity. It was a far cry from the cold, corporate walls of her former empire. She felt a pang of unease, a subtle reminder of just how far she had fallen. Liam's office was sleek yet personal, with shelves lined with art books, awards, and photos from gallery openings. He motioned for her to take a seat, then settled into the chair opposite her. "So," Liam began, leaning back slightly. "What brings you here, Victoria?" She swallowed, her carefully constructed mask of confidence slipping for a moment. "I saw the listing for the assistant position," she said. "But I need work." Liam studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "An assistant position. Interesting." She bristled slightly at his tone but forced herself to remain calm. "I'm aware it's a step down from what I'm used to, but I'm not in a position to be choosy right now." "Clearly," Liam said, his tone sharper than she expected. He leaned forward, his elbows resting on the desk. "Do you remember what you told me the day you fired me?" Victoria blinked, caught off guard by the directness of his question. She opened her mouth to respond but found she couldn't quite summon the words. Liam didn't wait for her to answer. "Results matter, not potential," he said, his voice calm but laced with a faint edge. "That's what you said to me. Do you still believe that?" Her throat tightened. She looked down for a moment, suddenly unable to meet his gaze. "I was doing what I thought was best for the company," she said quietly. "It wasn't personal." "Not personal?" Liam repeated, a bitter laugh escaping him. "Victoria, you dismissed me like I was nothing. You didn't even give me a chance to prove myself. Do you know how that felt?" She looked up at him, her eyes filled with something close to regret. "I wasn't thinking about how it felt," she admitted. "And that was my mistake." For a moment, there was silence between them. Liam tapped a finger against the desk, his expression contemplative. Finally he spoke. "I've spent years trying to forget what happened that day. But in a strange way, I'm grateful for it. Getting fired was the push I needed to pursue my passion, and it led me here." Victoria nodded slowly, sensing the shift in his tone. "It seems you've done well for yourself." "I have," Liam said simply. "And now, you're sitting across from me, asking for a job." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Victoria felt her cheeks flush, the reality of her situation pressing down on her. "I know how it looks," she said softly. "And I understand if you don't want to hire me. But I'm asking for a chance." Liam studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he stood and walked to the window, looking out at the bustling city below. "Do you really think you can handle this?" he asked, his voice quiet. "This isn't the corporate world, Victoria. It's a different kind of work. Humble, collaborative. And it's not about power or control." "I can handle it," she said, her voice firmer now. "I'm willing to learn." Liam turned back to her, his gaze piercing. "Why should I hire you?" She hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Because I've changed," she said. "I've lost everything, Liam. My company, my reputation, my home. I know what it's like to struggle now, to feel powerless. And I don't want to be that person anymore, the one who looks down on others. I want to be better." Her words hung in the air, raw and unpolished. Liam watched her closely, searching her face for any sign of insincerity. Slowly, he nodded. "All right," he said. "You can start on Monday." Victoria's eyes widened slightly, relief washing over her. "Thank you," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "Don't thank me yet," Liam said, his tone still serious. "This won't be easy, and I'm not going to go easy on you. You'll earn your place here, just like everyone else." She nodded, her gratitude genuine. "I understand. And I won't let you down." Liam watched her for a moment longer, then extended a hand. "Welcome to the team." She shook his hand, a small but genuine smile tugging at her lips. For the first time in a long time, she felt something resembling hope. Victoria arrived at the studio early on Monday morning, the sound of the city just beginning to stir outside. Dressed in a simple blouse and slacks, she carried none of the polished armor she used to wear. No tailored suits, no designer handbags. She stood outside the building for a moment, taking a deep breath before stepping inside. This was the start of something new, and she wasn't sure if she was ready. But she had no other choice. Inside, the studio was already buzzing with activity. Artists moved between easels, discussing projects and exchanging ideas. The air smelled faintly of paint and coffee, and the energy of the room was completely different from the sterile corporate environment she had once commanded. She felt out of place, an outsider in a world she didn't understand. "Good morning, Victoria." Liam's voice cut through her thoughts. She turned to see him approaching, clipboard in hand, his expression calm but professional. He was dressed casually, yet he still exuded the same confidence she'd seen during their interview. "Good morning," she replied, her tone more subdued than she intended. "Follow me," he said, leading her through the studio. "I want to introduce you to the team." As they walked, Liam pointed out different areas of the studio: the main workspace, the supply room, the break area. Finally, they stopped in front of a group of artists gathered around a large table covered in sketches and swatches of color. "Everyone," Liam said, drawing their attention, "this is Victoria. She'll be joining us as an assistant." The group exchanged polite nods and smiles, though Victoria could feel the curiosity, and perhaps a hint of skepticism, in their eyes. She couldn't blame them. She wasn't exactly the picture of a creative collaborator. "Victoria will be helping with logistics and organization," Liam continued. She's here to support you, so don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything. One of the artists, a woman with bright red hair and paint smudged on her hands, gave Victoria a friendly smile. "Welcome to the team." "Thank you," Victoria said, her voice steady. She appreciated the warmth, even if it didn't entirely quell her nerves. The first few weeks were humbling. Victoria found herself doing tasks she would have once considered beneath her, organizing supplies, cleaning up after projects, scheduling appointments. The work was far removed from the high-stakes decisions and boardroom meetings she had once thrived in. But it was honest work, and it forced her to confront the arrogance she had carried for so long. At first, her presence in the studio was met with a mix of curiosity and caution. Some of the artists were wary of her corporate background, while others seemed genuinely intrigued by the idea of a former CEO working as an assistant. Slowly, as she showed her willingness to learn and her genuine effort to contribute, the team began to warm to her. One day, as she was organizing a shelf of canvases, the red-haired artist, whose name she had learned was Natalie, approached her. "Hey, Victoria," Natalie said, holding a cup of coffee in each hand. "Thought you could use a break?" Victoria smiled, taking the offered cup. "Thanks." Natalie leaned against the shelf, her expression thoughtful. "You know, when Liam said he was hiring someone with a corporate background, I wasn't sure what to expect." Different? Different how?" Victoria asked, genuinely curious. Natalie shrugged. "I don't know. I guess I expected you to be more detached? But you're not. You're trying, and that means something." Victoria looked down at the coffee in her hands, her voice soft. "I've made a lot of mistakes in the past. I'm just trying to be better." Natalie nodded, her smile warm. "Well, for what it's worth, I think you're doing a good job." As the weeks turned into months, Victoria began to find her rhythm in the studio. She started to understand the creative process, learning how to support the artists in ways that mattered. And in turn, she began to rediscover parts of herself she had long buried: empathy, humility, and a genuine appreciation for collaboration. One afternoon, Liam called her into his office. He was seated at his desk, reviewing a set of sketches. "Take a seat," he said, motioning to the chair across from him. Victoria sat down, her posture straight but not stiff. "Is something wrong?" "Not at all," Liam replied, setting the sketches aside. "I just wanted to check in. You've been here for a few months now, and I wanted to see how you're feeling." She hesitated, considering his question. "Honestly, it's been challenging, but in a good way. I've learned a lot, and I feel like I'm finally contributing." Liam nodded, his expression thoughtful. "You've done well. The team likes you, and you've proven that you're willing to put in the work." "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. "That means a lot coming from you." Liam leaned back in his chair, studying her for a moment. "I have to admit, I didn't think you'd last this long. But you've surprised me." Victoria met his gaze, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I've surprised myself." For a moment, they sat in silence, the weight of their shared history hanging between them. Finally, Liam spoke. "I think it's time we start giving you more responsibility. There's a project coming up that I think you'd be perfect for." Her eyebrows lifted in surprise. "What kind of project?" "It's a collaboration with a nonprofit," Liam explained. "They're commissioning a mural for a community center, and will need someone to manage the logistics and coordinate with their team. It's a big job, but I think you're ready for it." Victoria felt a surge of both excitement and apprehension. "I'll do my best," she said. "I know you will," Liam said, his tone sincere. "You've come a long way, Victoria. Keep it up." As she left his office, Victoria felt a sense of pride she hadn't felt in years. This wasn't about reclaiming power or status. It was about earning trust and proving to herself that she could be better. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was on the right path. The nonprofit project became Victoria's focus for the next several weeks. It was a massive undertaking, coordinating with the nonprofit's leadership team, liaising with community members, managing schedules for the artists, and ensuring that every logistical detail was accounted for. Victoria threw herself into the work, her sharp organizational skills coming back to life. But unlike her past corporate role, this wasn't about commanding others, it was about collaborating. On her first visit to the community center, she was struck by its modest charm. Children ran through the hallways, laughter echoing off the walls, while volunteers sorted donations and prepared meals in the kitchen. It was a vibrant, hopeful space, and Victoria felt a pang of something unfamiliar: connection. "Thank you for taking this on," said Maria, the director of the nonprofit, as she showed Victoria around. Maria was a kind, middle-aged woman with warm eyes and a calming presence. "This mural means a lot to the community." Victoria nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I understand. We'll make sure it's something everyone can feel proud of." Maria smiled. "You're very different from what I expected." When Liam said he was sending someone with a corporate background, I braced myself. Victoria let out a small laugh. "You're not the first person to say that." "It's a compliment," Maria said. "You seem like someone who cares. And that's what matters." Back at the studio, the team worked tirelessly on the mural's design. Victoria made a point to involve everyone in the process, ensuring that every voice was heard. She even spent hours sitting with Natalie and a few others, listening as they brainstormed ideas and sketched out concepts. One evening, as the team wrapped up for the day, Natalie turned to Victoria. "You know, I think you've got a knack for this," she said with a grin. "For what?" Victoria asked, genuinely curious. "For bringing people together," Natalie replied. "It's not just about organizing schedules or keeping things on track. You've created an environment where everyone feels like they matter." Victoria felt a warmth spread through her chest. "That means a lot," she said softly. "Thank you." As the mural began to take shape, Victoria found herself spending more time at the community center, overseeing its progress and interacting with the locals. She started to recognize faces: kids who would peek in to watch the artists paint, elderly residents who would stop by to chat, volunteers who worked tirelessly to keep the center running. For the first time in years, Victoria felt like she was part of something bigger than herself. One afternoon, as Victoria was reviewing the final schedule for the mural's completion, Liam arrived at the community center. He hadn't visited the site since the project began, trusting Victoria to handle the details. As he walked through the doors, he immediately noticed the changes: the vibrant energy, the sense of excitement in the air. He found Victoria standing near the mural, clipboard in hand, deep in conversation with one of the artists. She looked up when she saw him and smiled. "Liam, I wasn't expecting you. Thought I'd check in," he said, his tone light. "Looks like you've got everything under control." Victoria nodded, gesturing to the mural. "It's coming together beautifully. The team's done an incredible job." Liam stepped closer, studying the mural. It was a stunning piece, filled with vibrant colors and imagery that reflected the spirit of the community. "It's impressive," he said. "You've done well." "Thank you," Victoria said, her voice steady. "I couldn't have done it without the team." Liam turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "You've changed, you know." She met his gaze, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I had to." "It's more than that," he said. "You've become someone people want to work with. Someone who listens, who cares. That's not something you can fake." Victoria looked away for a moment, her cheeks flushing slightly. "I've had a good example," she said, her voice quiet. Liam smiled, a genuine warmth in his expression. "You've earned this, Victoria. And you should be proud." The day of the mural's unveiling was a celebration. The community center was packed with people: locals, artists, volunteers, and even a few reporters who had caught wind of the project. Victoria stood off to the side, watching as Maria gave a heartfelt speech about the importance of the mural and what it meant to the community. When it was time to reveal the artwork, a collective gasp filled the room. The mural was breathtaking, a vibrant depiction of the community's history, resilience, and hope for the future. Children pointed excitedly, adults smiled with tears in their eyes, and the room buzzed with energy. Victoria felt a lump form in her throat as she watched the reactions. She had spent years chasing power and success, believing that those were the only things that mattered. But in this moment, surrounded by people who were truly moved by something she had been a part of, she realized how wrong she had been. Liam found her amidst the crowd and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said simply. "We did it," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. For the first time in her life, Victoria felt whole. As the celebration wound down, Victoria and Liam stood outside the community center, watching the sun set over the city. The air was quiet, save for the faint hum of traffic in the distance. "Liam," Victoria said, breaking the silence. "I want to thank you." He turned to her, his expression curious. "For what?" "For giving me a chance," she said. "For believing I could be better." Liam smiled, his gaze steady. "Everyone deserves a chance, Victoria. You just have to be willing to take it." She nodded, her heart full. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. In the weeks following the mural's unveiling, the buzz surrounding the project didn't die down. Articles were written, photos circulated online, and the community center saw an influx of visitors who wanted to witness the stunning piece of art in person. It became a symbol of resilience and collaboration, and Victoria's role in its success didn't go unnoticed. Victoria, however, stayed in the background. She wasn't interested in the spotlight anymore. Instead, she threw herself into supporting the studio's growing list of projects, working closely with the team and fostering the collaborative spirit she had come to love. The satisfaction she felt now was unlike anything she had experienced in her corporate days. It wasn't about accolades or power, it was about purpose. One evening, after everyone else had left the studio, Victoria found herself tidying up the workspace. The soft glow of the overhead lights cast long shadows across the walls, and the faint smell of paint lingered in the air. She moved quietly, stacking brushes, organizing canvases, and wiping down surfaces. It was a far cry from her days of signing multimillion-dollar contracts, but she wouldn't trade it for anything. As she worked, Liam appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame with his arms crossed. "Still here?" he asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. Victoria glanced up and smiled. "Couldn't leave it a mess." Liam stepped into the room, grabbing a stool and sitting across from her. "You've really embraced this place," he said. "It's become a home," Victoria replied honestly. "More than any office ever was." He nodded, studying her for a moment. "You know, I've been thinking about something." "What's that?" she asked, setting down the brushes and giving him her full attention. Liam leaned forward, his expression serious. "I think it's time for you to take on a bigger role here." Victoria blinked, caught off guard. "A bigger role?" "Yeah," he said. "You've proven yourself over and over again. The team trusts you. I trust you. And I think it's time you moved into a leadership position." Her breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. "Liam, I don't know if I'm ready for that." "You're more than ready," he said firmly. "Look at everything you've done since you got here. The mural, the way you've brought the team together, you've transformed this place as much as it's transformed you." Victoria hesitated, her mind racing. She thought about the person she used to be, the mistakes she had made, the people she had hurt. But then she thought about everything she had learned, the ways she had grown, and the relationships she had built. For the first time, she believed she could lead, not with power or authority, but with empathy and collaboration. "All right," she said finally, her voice steady. "If you think I can do it, I'll try." Liam smiled, the warmth in his expression unmistakable. "I don't think you can do it, Victoria. I know you can." In her new role, Victoria flourished. She became a mentor to the team, sharing not just her organizational skills but also the hard-earned lessons from her fall from grace. She encouraged open communication, celebrated creativity, and worked tirelessly to support the studio's mission. Under her guidance, the studio expanded its reach, taking on larger projects and forging partnerships with other organizations. The nonprofit mural had been just the beginning. Over the next year, the studio completed a series of community-focused projects, murals in schools, installations in hospitals, and workshops for underprivileged youth. Victoria spearheaded many of these efforts, building relationships and ensuring that each project had a lasting impact. But perhaps the most profound transformation was within herself. She no longer measured success by numbers or accolades. Instead, it was the smiles of the children who painted alongside her, the gratitude of the communities she worked with, and the sense of fulfillment she felt at the end of each day. One day, as Victoria walked through the studio, she came across Natalie working on a new piece. The vibrant strokes of color on the canvas caught her eye, and she paused to admire the work. "It's beautiful," Victoria said, her voice soft. Natalie looked up and smiled. "Thanks. It's a piece for the new gallery show." Victoria nodded, her heart swelling with pride. She loved seeing the team thrive, their talents shining brighter with each passing day. "You know," Natalie said, setting down her brush, "I was skeptical when you first joined us. But you've changed this place for the better." Victoria felt a lump form in her throat. "That means a lot, Natalie." "Thank you." "It's true," Natalie continued. "You've taught us that leadership isn't about being in charge, it's about lifting others up. And you do that every day." Victoria smiled, her chest tight with emotion. "I've learned as much from all of you as you've learned from me." As the studio continued to grow, Victoria found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. She thought about the person she used to be, cold, ruthless, and detached, and the person she had become. It hadn't been an easy road, but it had been worth it. One evening, after a long day at the studio, she sat in her small apartment, looking out at the city skyline. It wasn't the penthouse view she once had, but it was hers, and it felt more meaningful than any luxury ever could. Her phone buzzed, and she picked it up to see a message from Liam. "Great work today. Couldn't have done this without you. Proud of you." Victoria smiled, her heart full. She set the phone down and leaned back, letting the weight of the day melt away. For the first time in her life, she felt at peace, not because of what she had achieved, but because of who she had become. As the years passed, Victoria's influence within the studio only grew. She became more than a leader, she became a pillar of the community the studio had built. Her past life as a Ruthless felt like a distant memory, though it was one she never allowed herself to forget. It served as a reminder of how far she had come and how much she had changed. One morning, Victoria arrived at the studio early, as she often did, to prepare for the day ahead. The sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow on the walls adorned with the team's latest works. She took a moment to look around, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the life she had rebuilt. As she sorted through a stack of paperwork, Liam walked in, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you could use a pick-me-up," he said, setting one on her desk. "You're a lifesaver," Victoria replied with a smile, taking a sip. "What's the occasion?" Liam leaned against the desk, his expression thoughtful. "Just wanted to talk. It's been a while since we had a proper chat." Victoria set down her coffee, sensing the weight in his tone. "Everything all right?" "Yeah," Liam said, nodding. "I've just been thinking about how far we've come. The studio, the DC." Victoria raised an eyebrow, a small smile playing on her lips. "Me? You've transformed this place, Victoria," Liam said, his voice sincere. "And yourself. It's been incredible to watch." Victoria felt her cheeks flush. She still wasn't entirely comfortable with praise, though she appreciated it deeply. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said. "You gave me a second chance when I didn't deserve one." Liam shook his head. "You earned that chance. And you've more than proven yourself." There was a pause, a comfortable silence between them as they reflected on everything they had built together. Finally, Liam spoke again. "We've got some big opportunities coming up, partnerships with national organizations, larger projects. I want you to be at the forefront of them." Victoria's eyes widened slightly. "Liam, No excuses," he said, cutting her off with a grin. "You've got the vision, the skills, and the heart. The team looks up to you. I look up to you. It's time for you to step into that role fully." Victoria took a deep breath, her mind racing. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the setbacks, the lessons, the people who had helped her along the way. And for the first time, she felt ready. "All right," she said finally, her voice steady. "Let's do it." Months later, the studio unveiled one of its most ambitious projects yet, a nationwide initiative to bring art programs to underserved communities. Victoria led the charge, coordinating with schools, nonprofits, and local artists to make the vision a reality. The impact was profound, reaching thousands of people and fostering creativity in places where it had long been overlooked. One day, as she stood in a school gymnasium surrounded by children painting murals on the walls, Victoria felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to see Maria, the nonprofit director who had worked with her on the first mural. "I had to come see this for myself," Maria said, smiling warmly. "It's incredible." Victoria gestured to the children, who were laughing and chatting as they painted. "They're the incredible ones. We're just giving them the tools." Maria nodded, her expression thoughtful. "You've come a long way, Victoria. I don't know if you realize just how much you've done." Victoria looked down, her heart full. "It's not about me," she said softly. "It's about them. And it always will be." Maria placed a hand on her shoulder. "That's what makes you a true leader." As the years went on, Victoria continued to build on the work she and Liam had started. The studio became a beacon of hope and creativity, and Victoria became a respected figure in the art world, not for her past as a CEO, but for her unwavering dedication to empowering others. One evening, as she walked through the now expanded studio, she found herself standing in front of a wall covered in photos. There were snapshots of the team, children from the programs, and completed murals from across the country. In the center of the collage was a picture of the very first mural, the one that had marked the start of her transformation. She smiled, reaching out to touch the edge of the photo. It was a reminder of how much could change when you opened yourself to growth, when you let go of ego and embraced the power of community. Liam appeared beside her, his hands in his pockets. "Thinking about the past?" he asked. "Always," Victoria replied, her voice soft. "It keeps me grounded." Liam nodded, his expression thoughtful. "You've built something amazing here, Victoria. Something lasting." "We've built it," she corrected, turning to him with a smile. "And it's only the beginning." Liam grinned. "Well, here's to the future." Victoria looked back at the wall of photos, her heart full of hope. "Here's to the future," she echoed. Victoria's influence within the studio continued to ripple outward, inspiring new initiatives and collaborations that reached far beyond what she had ever envisioned. The studio became a hub for changemakers, artists, community leaders, educators, and activists, working together to use art as a tool for empowerment and connection. And through it all, Victoria remained at the center, quietly guiding the ship with a steady hand and an open heart. 5 years later, the studio buzzed with energy as people gathered for the annual Art for Change Gala, an event that had grown into a major fundraiser for the studio's programs. The walls were lined with artwork from all corners of the country, pieces created by children, community members, and professional artists alike. Each one told a story, a testament to the impact the studio had made over the years. Victoria stood near the entrance, greeting guests as they arrived. She was no longer the sharp-edged Joe she once was, but there was still an undeniable presence about her, a quiet confidence that drew people in. Dressed in a simple but elegant outfit, she radiated warmth as she shook hands and exchanged smiles. "Victoria," Natalie called, weaving through the crowd with a glass of champagne in hand. "This place looks amazing. You've outdone yourself." Victoria laughed, gesturing to the bustling room. "It's not me. It's the team. They've worked so hard to make this happen." "Give yourself some credit," Natalie said, clinking her glass against Victoria's. "None of us would be here without you." Victoria's smile softened. "That's not true. We're all here because we believe in what we're doing. This isn't about me, it's about all of us." As the evening went on, Victoria moved through the crowd, stopping to chat with familiar faces and new supporters alike. She spotted Maria, the nonprofit director, standing near a display of photos from the studio's early days. Maria waved her over, her expression beaming. "Victoria," Maria said, pulling her into a hug. "Look at this. Look at everything you've built." Victoria glanced at the photos, her chest tightening with emotion. There was the mural that started it all, the team's first big project together, and countless moments of joy and collaboration captured over the years. "We've come a long way," Victoria said, her voice thick with gratitude. Maria placed a hand on her shoulder. "You should be proud. You've created something that's going to outlive all of us." Victoria nodded, the weight of those words sinking in. She had spent so much of her life chasing temporary markers of success, wealth, power, accolades. But this was legacy. This was what truly mattered. Later that night, as the gala wound down, Victoria stepped outside for a moment of quiet. The cool night air was refreshing, and she took a deep breath, letting it fill her lungs. She looked up at the stars, her mind drifting back to the person she had been all those years ago. The woman who had fired Liam without a second thought, who had valued results over people, who had lost everything because she didn't know how to lead with her heart. That woman felt like a stranger now, someone she barely recognized. And yet, she carried those lessons with her every day, a reminder of how far she had come. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Liam's voice broke through her reverie. She turned to see him standing a few steps away, his hands in his pockets and a knowing smile on his face. "You've been awfully quiet tonight," he said, walking over to join her. "Just taking it all in," Victoria replied. "It's overwhelming in the best way." Liam nodded, leaning against the railing beside her. "It's a lot. But you should be proud, Victoria. None of this would exist without you." She shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips. "You keep saying that, but it's not true. This exists because of all of us, because of the team, the community, the people who believed in this vision. And because you believed in yourself," Liam said, his tone firm. "Don't downplay that. You could have walked away after everything that happened, but you didn't. You chose to stay, to change, to grow." Victoria looked at him, her eyes glistening. "I couldn't have done it without you, Liam. You saw something in me when I didn't see it in myself." Liam smiled, his expression warm. "That's what second chances are for." As they stood together under the stars, Victoria felt a sense of peace she had never known before. Her journey had been anything but easy, but it had been worth every step. She had found her purpose, her community, and most importantly herself. And as she looked out at the city skyline, she knew this was only the beginning. The gala wrapped up in the early hours of the morning, leaving the studio quiet once more. Victoria stayed behind, helping the team clean up and sharing a few laughs as they recounted the evening's highlights. By the time the last of the decorations had been packed away, the clock struck 2 a.m., and the studio's once bustling energy gave way to calm. Victoria lingered for a moment, standing in the center of the space. The photos from the gala's displays had been left out, scattered across a table. She picked up one of the oldest ones, a shot of the team gathered around the community center mural. She smiled at how young they all looked, how much they had grown since then. As she placed the photo back down, the door creaked open, and Liam stepped inside. "Still here?" he asked, his voice warm but teasing. "You know me," Victoria replied, brushing her hands on her slacks. "I like to finish things." He nodded, stepping closer and folding his arms. "Big night?" "It was," she agreed. "The biggest we've ever had." "Do you realize what you've built, Victoria?" Liam asked, his tone soft but pointed. "This place, these people, the lives you've touched, it's extraordinary." Victoria shook her head slightly, her expression thoughtful. "It wasn't just me." "No," Liam said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "But it started with you." She looked at him, her chest tightening. "You've been saying that for years." "Because it's true," he replied. "You didn't just build a studio. You created a movement. You showed people what's possible when they lead with empathy and purpose. That's a legacy, Victoria. And it's yours." The words hit her deeply, but they didn't inflate her pride. Instead, they settled into her heart, filling her with a quiet, humbling sense of fulfillment. "I don't think I'll ever get used to hearing that," she admitted. "Good," Liam said. "That's what keeps you grounded." In the weeks that followed the gala, the studio continued to expand its reach, with new projects sprouting up in cities across the country. Victoria took on a more strategic role, mentoring younger leaders and ensuring the studio's values remained intact as it grew. She found joy in watching others step into leadership roles, knowing they were carrying forward the mission she had once doubted she could even be part of. One day, while sorting through old files in the office, Victoria came across a folder she hadn't opened in years. Inside were documents from her time at Victoria Enterprises, profit reports, strategy memos, even a draft of the speech she had planned to give when the company hit its peak. She sat back in her chair, staring at the papers with a mix of nostalgia and detachment. That life felt like it belonged to someone else, a version of herself she had long outgrown. And yet, she felt no bitterness. Instead, she felt gratitude for the lessons, the failures, and the second chance she had been given. Taking a deep breath, Victoria closed the folder and placed it in a box marked for storage. She didn't need to hold on to it anymore. The past had shaped her, but it didn't define her. What defined her now was the work she did every day, the lives she touched, and the community she had helped create. On a sunny afternoon, the studio hosted an outdoor event to unveil its latest project, a massive mural in the heart of the city, celebrating the diversity and resilience of the community. Hundreds of people gathered to witness the unveiling, including local leaders, artists, and families who had contributed to the project. As the cloth covering the mural was pulled away, a collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The artwork was breathtaking, a vibrant tapestry of colors and symbols that told the story of the city and its people. Children pointed excitedly, while adults marveled at the detail and emotion captured in the piece. Victoria stood off to the side, her hands clasped in front of her as she watched the reactions. She felt a familiar warmth in her chest, the same feeling she had experienced at the first mural unveiling all those years ago. It was a reminder of why she did this work, of the impact art could have on people's lives. Liam joined her, his expression mirroring her pride. "Another masterpiece," he said. "It's theirs," Victoria replied, nodding toward the crowd. "We just gave them the tools." He looked at her, his smile soft. "You always say that, but you know it's more than that. You gave them the courage to believe in themselves. That's the real gift." Victoria met his gaze, her eyes glistening. "I've had a lot of help along the way." "Maybe," Liam said, "but you've earned this." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city, Victoria stood in front of the mural, taking in its beauty one last time. Children played nearby, their laughter filling the air, while families took photos in front of the artwork. It was a scene of pure joy, and Victoria felt a deep sense of peace. She knew her journey was far from over. There were still projects to tackle, communities to support, and lessons to learn. But for the first time in her life, she felt truly content, not because of what she had achieved, but because of who she had become. Victoria turned to Liam, who stood nearby, his hands in his pockets and a satisfied look on his face. "Ready to head back?" he asked. "Not yet," she said, her voice soft. "I just want to stay a little longer." Liam nodded, stepping aside to give her space. Victoria looked back at the mural, her heart full. This was her legacy, not the power she once wielded, but the lives she had touched, the connections she had made, and the hope she had helped create. And as the stars began to appear in the night sky, she smiled, knowing the best was still yet to come.